For more now on this final goodbye, Kane Farabaugh joins us right outside the Carter Center in Atlanta. Kane is a Voice of America correspondent who covered Carter's life and legacy for the last 20 years. And we know he also became a personal friend of the former president. Kane, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We can see that people were walking outside the Carter Center behind you, and we know that you've been following Carter's casket throughout the day. What has today been like? What has this process been like for you?
Well, it's certainly an emotional moment. I mean, a lot of planning and a lot of talk and a lot of expectation has led up to this moment. And he's been in hospice care for 22 months. But most of the people that I've been talking to today still say they weren't prepared for the eventuality that this would be here, this moment would come. He's been so present for so long. He's done so much with the time that he's had that it's very difficult to imagine a world that Jimmy Carter isn't living in. But this is the moment that we're in. And for the people that I spoke to in Plains, Georgia, the people I'm speaking to here in Atlanta, it is emotional for them.
Absolutely. And speaking of those emotions, have you had a chance to talk to any members of the Carter family today, Kane?
I'm friends with Jimmy Carter's niece, Kim Fuller, who is Billy Carter's daughter, Jimmy Carter's brother, Billy Carter's daughter. And Kim Fuller is also now the woman who is taking over the mantle of Jimmy Carter's Sunday school lessons at Maranatha Baptist Church in their hometown of Plains. And I had a chance to actually catch up with her this morning. We were talking about the times that, Jimmy would correct her when she was teaching those Sunday school lessons and what it's like to actually get notes from the former president about how she should be conducting those Sunday school lessons. And he's not going to be around giving her those notes and those lessons anymore. And it's a moment in which she also expected. She's admitted that it's something that she's also planned for, like the rest of the family has. And she said that it's going to hit her when all of this attention, all of this fanfare, all of the ceremonial things that are happening right now, when all of that is done, she thinks that's when the moment's going to hit her the most.
But those lessons will continue to live on, Kane. And we know people from all walks of life, they've been remembering Carter today. And we know that you went from covering Carter to really knowing him on a personal level. Is there an interaction or a story that stands out to you most that you'd like to share with us?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things about this is that President Carter invited me and my boys to come down and fish at the pond in front of his home. And my oldest son, Lucas, and my middle son, Henry, they had actually never fished up to that point. So I thought, well, OK, we're going to make this a special moment. We're going to wait for the first time you fish. You'll fish with President Carter. We'll do it at the pond in front of his home. My son, Henry, caught fish before President Carter caught fish in the pond. And I was a little worried about the competitive nature and President Carter not being the one to kind of show Henry how to catch the fish first. But the one thing that was great was just, just being present with him in that moment, being with him at that pond. And now, actually, that is the place where President Carter will be buried. When his casket finally passes through Plains on its final procession, they will take him to his home and they will bury him beneath a willow tree next to that pond where we all had a chance to fish just about 7 or 8 years ago. And so it'll be an emotional moment for me, probably, too.
Oh, I can only imagine. And absolutely, buried next to Rosalind in the modest home that they built together there in Georgia. And Kane, what's next for you as this process continues? Are you going to be following for all 6 days?
Well, actually, I'm going to try to see if I can get in line tonight to go into the repose myself and to pay my respects to President Carter here in Atlanta. And then I'm also going to spend the rest of the week here in Atlanta and in Plains. We'll be heading down to Plains after the activities here in Atlanta conclude, when President Carter goes to Washington, D.C., where he'll lie in state at the national capital. When that happens, we'll transition from here down to Plains, Georgia. And that's when we'll be in place in downtown Plains when the funeral service takes place at Maranatha Baptist Church there. And then when he is removed from Maranatha and then taken to his home to get to his final resting place.
And Kane, before we let you go, Carter spent 4 years in office, but he spent a lifetime, him and his wife, just helping people, literally with their own hands, building homes for the poor and causing so much peace and making sure that that was going on around the world, ensuring protections for elections. We can go on and on about his legacy, but you really got to know him on a human level. Can you talk a little bit more about the human Jimmy Carter that you got to experience for 20 years?
So I often tell people that, not only is Jimmy Carter the greatest man that I ever had the honor of interviewing, he's also the greatest man that I have the honor of calling my friend. The one thing about Jimmy Carter is the fact that he had time for you. He was an accessible president, but he was also a down-to-earth person. I mean, just because he sat behind the Resolute desk at the Oval Office didn't separate him from the American people. And that was the way it was in a friendship. I mean, he was Jimmy Carter drinking a glass of wine with you at a reception, the same as he was Jimmy Carter when he was going to have to be in front of thousands of people giving a speech about an important issue like human rights. He was approachable. He was accessible. He was honest. I mean, he would certainly tell you what he thought. He would tell you his impressions about things, even if you didn't like what he was telling you. He was going to be honest and direct with you. And I think that was also a tenet of or a virtue that he expressed while he was president as well. He was an honest man. He tried to tell the truth, and he promised the American people that he was going to tell the truth.
He promised the American people he would tell the truth, and he did. Voice of America, Kane Farabaugh, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right.